I think it's always been easy to have a script, to have a face that I put on, to kind of show up and appear the way that I think people want. But you're never really known that way. And how sincere can our relationships be? And I think the sacrifice of letting your guards down, the sacrifice of, I'm much better at receiving gifts now, but I think it's always easier to give away, isn't it, right? Because it hits on your worthiness, your sense of, do I deserve this? And I think friendship, relationship, for a long time I struggled to feel that I was worthy. What's been the biggest sacrifice that I've made for healthy relationships, for friendships? And I began thinking, and I'm like, yeah, maybe, maybe it's the times when you choose to not control people just to protect yourself. That's felt sacrificial. I'm like, oh, that's maybe not quite the one. And then I began to think, and this one hurt a bit more, but I was like, maybe it's the times when I've had to celebrate when other people get the thing that I want, that I've been praying for, that I've been contending for. That one hurts. So I thought about that. But I felt like there was one deeper, just going kind of all the way back for me. And I think the biggest and preliminary sacrifice that entering into a relationship takes is the vulnerability of being known. Is actually receiving friendship back, receiving love. And for me, I think it's always been easy to have a script, to have a face that I put on, to kind of show up and appear the way that I think people want. But you're never really known that way. And how sincere can our relationships be? And I think the sacrifice of letting your guards down, the sacrifice of, I'm much better at receiving gifts now, but I think it's always easier to give away, isn't it, right? Because it hits on your worthiness, your sense of, do I deserve this? And I think friendship, relationship, for a long time I struggled to feel that I was worthy to be known, worthy to show up and be loved in that way. And watching God first as friend, as father, step in and provide that, hey, I have better things than your walls you're hiding behind. Hey, I can be your protector. Hey, I can be your provider. Why? Like, could we try to replace some of the walls that you're keeping things out with my presence, with my spirit? And as those began to come down, kind of to my dismay, I began to realize this is really safe with God, but inevitably, I probably have to start doing this with people, which is a very different thing. And so I think that for me was such an entry point, because what do we have to give away? I didn't even know what friendship was until being brought into it, which means as I am, who I really am. And I think about, the word, we talk about being, transparent and vulnerable. And somebody once explained it to me. Transparency is like you can see straight through, right? It's all on the table. But vulnerability, we talk about very romantically. I think sometimes we put up a post and we use it like it's the most flowery, easy thing to achieve. If you think about it in war, if there's a gap in your armor and you're vulnerable, your life is on the line. And thinking in relationships, transparency, to hand that over is one thing, but to give you information that if you misused it, you could hurt me. That's a sacrifice. That's a relinquishing, a surrendering of trust into a relationship for the hope of being loved and giving something back. I think I always like to be on the giving end and the sacrifice of actually showing up to be known. It is. It's less risky. It's less risky. But I think that for me I'm like, if I go all the way back, I think that was really bedrock for me in the topic of sacrificial love. But I'm curious for you ladies, what does sacrificial love look like on a human level or with the Lord?
Our culture has emasculated the idea of sacrifice. From a biblical context, it's not passive. And we tend to think sacrifice as I give up. And it's like, no, that's actually not sacrifice. Sacrifice is so purposeful. It's, all right, this is going to hurt. I'm going to be cut open. And they might not say thank you. There's an aggressive purpose.
Not just thank you. I don't want you to love me for the rest of my life. Anytime I call,
not
you'd be
gonna
like,
happen.
sure. I'd be like, hey, this is your donor. Hey,
That's right.
Remember what I did?
Remember that time?
Remember?
And I want people to clap.
But who is more rejected than Jesus? If you look at the extension that like, anytime I feel misunderstood, I feel like, oh, that didn't quite work out. I'm like, I find communion with Jesus, right? Like I find fellowship with his extension. Still, like I'm yours. I've given everything. And we still have that choice all the way back to the beginning of the story.
That's right.
We still, we extend that choice. He extends it and he sits vulnerably waiting. And he
there's
doesn't give
such
it
a
back.
peace in purposefully letting go. There's a peace, and I feel like he's teaching me, and I'm such a slow learner that I wish I'd learned this earlier, especially with regards to vulnerability and friendship. But he's teaching me not to grip anything except for him. To really hold my hands loosely with my daughter, with my life, with my relationships, to go, I'm holding onto this so loosely that I can give you everything because I'm not holding anything back. The only thing I'm trying to cling to is my relationship with Jesus. I'll fight to the death for that. But even, it was a year ago, I got really sick, and just for a moment, it looked like I might meet Jesus sooner than I was planning. And I had such peace for about 45 seconds. About 45 seconds. Well, then I remembered I'd have to lay down my daughter. And I thought to absent from the body, present with Jesus means I'm not Missy's mama, and she's only 11 and she already lost her first mama. She's not old enough to be orphaned again. And I remember that fight of going, Lord, actually, it wouldn't be a good idea for you to take me now. And I had to go, I took it back. I did not trust him completely because I couldn't see around the corner. I wanted to make sure she was okay before I totally sacrificed. So I'm behind y'all. I'm in kindergarten stage, but I'm learning.
To that exact point, like I remember once somebody saying, you tend to struggle with one or the other. Like you'll find comfort and ease going to the Lord about something, but it could just be harder with people. Or you'll naturally go to people and it's just gonna be harder with the Lord. We're actually designed for both. So there's gonna be a rub, there's gonna be a confrontation somewhere. I think for me, I'm like, oh, this is so safe. This feels good. And I remember hearing, I mean, it changed things for me, where there's breakage relationally. God goes in, heals that wound, but the culmination of that healing must take place where the breakage happened with people. So do you understand? I can want to contain it all here, but the fullness of that healing is when I'm actually able to bring this out here. And that's not to ensure it doesn't happen again. That's not, and I think a lot of the joy, because we can't be tied to the outcome. We're never ensured that. That was never the promise ever, right? But I think for me, some of the joy, because I'm with you, I'm like, sometimes it doesn't just give me the butterflies being like, man, I gave away that really valuable thing to me. To grubby hands that will drop it in front of my, oh, that feels good. Like, oftentimes it's like, oh, I can feel the agitation, the rub. And I think what the Lord's invited me into that's felt so precious is him saying, hey, when you do this, you look like me. So regardless of how it's received, regardless of any outcome, like, hey, you look like me. You're obedient. That moment, like, you can tarry with me here. Does that make sense? Like, you stay awake with me here in this moment of extension and submission and possible rejection, but you look like your dad. And I like that. To me, there's a whole prize there. And you kind of have to lift out of the cost reward thing that we do down here to really engage with that one. But there is a joy to be found that cannot be taken away. That's not contingent on my circumstances or what I get, the give and take of I look like my father. And that's what I'm designed to do. I definitely have experienced, I think I'm a pretty sensitive person, so things can rub me the wrong way frequently. And so there's been, a full spectrum of decently minor things to more severe things. But, the Lord asking, hey, will you stick in it? And, him saying, I have grace for this. You can't do it on your own. You can't. But that's the whole point here. So you can live, in your own merit and your own efforts and what's possible, or you can rely on me here and see something supernatural happen. And so
pushing past offense to be there and to show up and to demonstrate a love that isn't earthly, a love that isn't human, a love that isn't generated in and of ourselves. That love goes a long way.
Like if we get praise before men, we get our reward then.
That's right. Yeah,
So it's like, I better hope. Like, I better hope that there are things that I haven't seen any return on, because that's going to be made in its fullness in his presence. I'm like, you better hope. Sometimes I think we worry, like, I'd made the sacrifice, I'm not seeing anything back. It doesn't work. Like, oh, no, it's working. There's a better working that's happening. There's a better investment. And again, you look like your Father. These are spiritual principles. Sacrifice works in the kingdom of God. It may not look like it's working here, but exactly, it's a different one. But in the end, these things pay off differently and a far greater reward, far greater. And so for me, I watched that. Like, am I doing this? Was my reward praise with men? Because I might as well enjoy it. I guess that's it.
And sometimes don't you want to go, no, I didn't mean it. I'm going to have cubic zirconias in my crown. And
yes. But the great reward of that in his presence before him, I get to look like him, the one who understands that vulnerability, the potential for rejection, the one who paid a whole way, paved a whole path for sacrificial love, our great example.
For us to just have the option.
Yes.
For us to have the
option. Jesus. So we get to look like him and find our great reward in him.
And we have almost you know how when you see a husband and a wife exchange a look and it's this private, they don't, anybody sees them, of such knowing, like you just go, oh, they didn't know anybody was watching, and there was the sweetest moment between them that was so, I want that with Jesus. I just want that with Jesus. And if I'm so preoccupied with what all these people are thinking of me, I miss those sweet glances with Jesus when he's like, I see you. I got you.
That satisfies. The other glances don't. That one does. I mean, it's sweet, it's nice. There's no lasting power to that. The glances from Jesus, knowing his eyes are on me, his eyes recognize the sacrifice, and only he knows the cost. You know, when we find our sustenance, our nutrients from his eyes, I think we can afford to give a lot more away without hesitation, quickly, because I'm fed. I'm well fed.
At TBN, our mission is to use every available means to reach as many individuals and families as possible with the life-changing gospel of Jesus Christ.
Thank you for helping make the gospel of grace go around the world.
And it's because of you that partner with us that this ministry continues. God bless you.